Good morning.
Good to see you. Good seeing you.
Good morning. Sorry I was a little late this morning. I did a different interview and I might have laid back down and gone to sleep, but that was my fault. I apologize for being a little bit behind. I think my child also took my keys, put them in a separate door to get out to the garage, and I was looking for my keys for a few minutes while I was trying to get out the door, but I apologize about that. Well, good morning. Welcome to another week here at the city in January. First off, I'd like to talk about this past weekend, and it was a successful weekend, I think, all the way around. I thought it was a great day. The Big Brothers Big Sisters event that was the gala that was there. Talk about it mainly because I had the opportunity to attend, but also I want to really brag on one of our own, our city council member, Jared Moore, who was featured prominently in that with his little. I will say he took on his little. I was impressed at how young he took that on to be a big brother to somebody before he got married. He now has 4 kids of his own, so there's somebody who doesn't really need another child. But Jared does an incredible job with his little, who is now I had a chance to meet Fernell, who's a great guy. He's a chef at at Bonefish Grill. He said has a car, has much more having Jared in his life. He talked about how much more productive his life was because of that. And I just really want to celebrate Jared and what he did in taking that on. I think that shows the commitment that we have at our city council members. Not only do they come here, do they have their own jobs, their own families, but they come here and work for the city, but they also volunteer in our community, and I just kind of wanted to highlight that. We also had a very successful Saturday. We had the Japan-American Alliance, had a great event. We had part of the Consulate General, their connection to Alabama. Mark Jackson was in town, and he and I hope to talk a little bit more about things and economic opportunities that are happening in Alabama and how we can be a player with those in Northwest Florida and work and continue to move along those cultural ties with Japan. But it was amazing. We had the people who do the big drums from Epcot were up here, and they put on an incredible performance. There were some martial arts performances and some geisha dancers dancing. So, I mean, it was all kind of things, great food from several of our local vendors. They do an incredible job, and I really want to say how much I appreciate the Japan American Society in putting that on. That night, I'm just going to brag about a friend of mine who I had the chance to go visit with and support. Brett Pera was the incoming president of the Escambia County Medical Association. I guess like the bar is for attorneys, this is for doctors in Santa Rosa County and Escambia County. And a good friend of mine, Brett Pera, was taking that on. So I was fortunate to be able to go to that. And as I said this morning on the radio, the Saints won on Sunday, so overall it was a fairly successful weekend. But looking into this next week, we got a lot of things that are happening. We will be out and about several times this week with the transition team. And again, I hope your listeners, your followers, your readers are seeing what is happening with where we're going with the transition team. Keep up with with what's happening this week. I know that the entire team will be meeting at Asbury Place on Tuesday at right after work at 5:30. So I hope you will be there as a part of that. I was there this weekend. My mother-in-law goes to church there. I was with Sherry Myers, and Sherry was already working on getting the room set up. So I know it's going to be good, and we're going to be well set up. And I know she's been wanting us to come out there. So the city is going to be in District 2. We're going to be at Asbury Place, and I hope you'll come join us. So there are other events that are also happening. Last week I went to one at Cordova Park Elementary School that Michelle Salzman did for education. I know that Drew Buchanan and I think Brian, you were in on that, that went to the May Center on Monday, and I heard had a phenomenal appearance. Unfortunately, I was with City Council determining City Council rules, but I heard it was very good. We're looking forward to figuring out when the attendance will be, and I'm confident they did a real good job last Monday. I have all the most confidence in our council. They're doing a good job. They're trying to figure out how much they want to meet and what do they want to do. And I think they're beginning to hone on a couple of things that I think will allow us to have better discussion of items coming forward. I hope they will take up a committee of the whole, at least look at that. If not, then 2 meetings, so we can do a little bit more discussion, because there are a lot of things that council members want to push. There are obviously a lot of things that we as the mayor want to push as well. And I think, I'm not saying we can't do it all in 1 meeting a month, but we probably could use something like a committee of the whole. So I'm waiting to see what recommendations they come out tonight or this afternoon in their discussion for Thursday, and so that'll be big. And again, this Thursday will be the second council meeting that I've had. Lastly, I want to talk about something that's coming up there that it kind of has come out a little bit here. I know some of you all have written about it, and it sort of has caused a little bit more of a stir, is what's going to happen in Scenic Heights at the looking at Hitzman Park and what we're beginning to do with the YMCA. There are a couple things. This is not something this is something that both the council and the previous mayor had moved forward. In fact, the council's already voted on it. So from my perspective, we are in charge of simply executing what's there. If the change is to be made, the council is going to have to make that change. But overall, there is a tremendous need for us to unify and put our soccer program in one place. We don't have a lot of places. This is not a county program. This is not a combination with a county program. This is strictly for city recreation. And I've said before when I'm in here, I think if there are 3 reasons why people choose to live in the city and pay the additional millage, is because of the expectations of better fire, better police, and better recreation. It is, I believe, our job to create better recreation, better opportunities for our citizens. And I think this, in pulling together this soccer complex, that is something that Brian wants to do, and especially the citizens who've been in the soccer leagues want to do. I'm committed to doing that, and I understand they have a location. There are some challenges with that location, and I've tried to tell the residents in that area that I'm more than willing to work in any way we can to mitigate what they perceive will be happening with impact. It has gotten a little ridiculous. People are making it sound as if there was never any sports played in that location. I will remind you that right now there is a city park at Hitzman Park, and there is also a YMCA park. So there are 2 regulation fields, in essence, in that location, with parking for that to go on. We are talking about going from 2 fields to simply 3 fields. And I do realize that is an incremental increase, but it is not like something new to the area. The other part that is in there that's going around is that somehow we're going to tear down all the trees in Hitzman Park. We will tear down some trees in Hitzman Park for the field. However, probably 80 to 90% of the trees in Hitzman will remain standing. There are trees on the YMCA property that will come down. Everybody keeps talking about the trees, but we're maintaining all of the trees. The disc golf, all the things that people enjoy about Hitzman will be there. There are some real opportunities for us partnering up with the YMCA that will really expand. While it won't be in that specific location, it will be for Northeast Pensacola. The Y is having a challenging time maintaining that one, and I would say if you looked at it, they do a good job with some programming, but overall they really haven't maximized what they can in that Langley location. What they would like to do is swap that with the city and go over to the Victory Center. And the reason they want to do that is because there's a pool already existing. They would take over the pool operations. They would also take over in essence, a little bit more programming for us at Victory. We have a gym. We have other stuff there. They will build, we have a basketball court. They will build a gym facility over there, and they will be programming the Victory Center, which has substantially more assets and opportunities at that center than their current place on Langley. Not to mention they also can partner in with the pool. So I think when you look at that, what we have to offer all of our citizens, I think overall this is a win-win-win. I understand it is an incremental increase to the citizens in Scenic Heights, and I'm more than happy to work with them on how we can mitigate that. I continue to hear about traffic, but I will remind you, the peak hours of traffic are daytime between 8 to 5. Most of the time of this field's use will be after 5 o'clock and on Saturdays. These are not peak traffic times. In other words, if Langley can handle that kind of traffic Monday through Friday, it can certainly handle it on Saturday. But I understand there's a desire to create some traffic calming on Langley, and this may offer the city an opportunity to do that. And I am sitting here ready to go meet with people in Scenic Heights and begin to figure out how that solution goes. I totally also understand that on the Soto Grande, on the south side of the park, there could be some issue with lighting. I've been very clear with Brian that I expect any lights that we put up, unlike the ones at Roger Scott, that any lights will have some type of a fender system underneath to make sure that lighting does not leave our field and go into neighboring neighborhoods. I certainly am sensitive to that, and I'm going to do everything I can to mitigate the circumstances for any of the residents in that area. But this is too good of an opportunity for our citizens, and what we do with recreation, what we're looking at doing with the Y, moving them to the Victory, and the opportunities that are there to really expand services of what we want to do. And this is not a brand new thing. I remember I played soccer at Hitzman Park in the 1970s. My child played flag football and at both Hitzman and the YMCA right there. I coached. I remember that being at those facilities. So these are not brand new uses to that area. They have 2 fields right now. We just want to take it to 3 fields. Of course, that any of those fields can be subdivided in for younger players, but again, those younger teams are typically smaller in size as far as number. They take up less space, but we'll continue to work that going through. But that's about all I have to talk about with you this morning. I'll take your questions. Andrew?
So on that, it occurs to me that the objection is to new traffic, but with the Y moving, all of their traffic is going to stop. I mean, so do we have a now versus then traffic count comparison?
We can look at it. I think one thing that happens is people underestimate or they overestimate one particular location. I continue to see things online. People say, oh my God, it's 800 kids are in this soccer thing. Well, obviously, not all of them will come during that time. But if you look at things on a traffic count, even if 800 new people made the trip and they made it on a Saturday, how much more incremental would that be? Or even if it was at nighttime. With that said, I'm totally sympathetic to we've got to do some traffic. I see chiefs in the back. I know I continue to hear about speeding on Langley and challenges. I think that has more to do with Langley has some straightaways where there are no four-way stops. There's no anything else. We've sort of created Langley to be a speedway. So if there's some things we need to do on Langley to slow it down, if at Hibiscus we need to put a four-way stop, or if we need to do it Hilltop right there, because we're going to line our parking lot in and out with Hilltop. So you could make a traffic signal, you could do a roundabout, any number of things that will slow traffic down and slow speed down. So we're very sensitive to that, and we believe, at least in putting the park in there, that it now gives us the opportunity to really change Langley and put some things that have not been in Langley historically, which, if we don't do this right now, we're still going to have speeding problems on Langley.
The play structure is still going to be replaced there?
Hitzman Park, the play structure there will absolutely, there will be a play structure, and there will be a large wooded park in Hitzman Park. Those will continue to be there, and there's a lot of misinformation going on about that. That is not what is planned. There's very little that's going to touch that park. A little bit to the east of where the existing field is, some of those trees on that very edge will be taken down, and we will have to make some alterations to the disc golf. But disc golf will be there. Brian says it's very well used, and we will continue to have it there as a part of Hitzman Park. And Hitzman Park will continue to be wooded with a play set there. And if we're slated for improvements at that play set, those will be made as well. Yes.
The partial federal shutdown is going into its 4th week. Has the city started feeling its effects yet?
I can tell you we've had that discussion a little bit. We are not expecting any effects at this particular time. Now, if the shutdown continues further than February, we will have significant impact at that point. We will begin to see impacts to the city. Now, not so much the city operations, but we do some things with housing. We have a number of landlords that we pass along, housing subsidies that come through. I don't have the exact number or the exact total, but I've been told by our group that does housing that all of those landlords, they got rent for February, but they won't get rent for March, and that will start creating impacts for housing for a number of our citizens in the city of Pensacola. So, and they also sort of do that housing in Escambia County as well. So there will be several citizens that will be impacted if this continues past February. Yes, Joe.
Going back to the soccer issue, with
the city council voted last year, I believe it was to authorize the mayor to negotiate with YMCA about the land swap.
Yes.
Has that been executed? Where are y'all with that?
We are still. I've met with the Y, and we've told them to be moving forward. Obviously, we're waiting for the transition team to come back. But I think one thing that we campaigned on, and one thing we've seen already in discussions, is the expectation that we'll be using our community centers more. We'll be looking for ways to do more programming in there. To have the Y take a community center like Vickery and be able to be the programming arm so that we can spend our resources in other places is a really good deal for us. I mean, from the Y's perspective, they have swimming. It's not, in the cost of maintaining the pool, it's not as big a pool. It doesn't offer as much. For them to be able to come over to Vickery and take over our pool, for them to be able to partner with a much better basketball court and better opportunities for their programming at the Vickery Center than what they have on Langley. It's a very positive benefit for us, and plus it really allows the city then to take some of its resources and look at community centers on the west side and place more city resources in those. So for me, I think it really helps the mission of what we want to accomplish, and we're in that negotiation right now, and we're moving forward with swapping with the Y. I mean, we think it's going to be paramount to the things we want to do with our community centers, both on the east side of town, but also on the west side of town. It allows us to put more city resources in those community centers on the west side of town.
Will it remain a city property, or we have to
it will no. It will remain a city property. It will be administered by the Y. I don't know what's going to happen with the swimming pool, but I mean, if you need to use the basketball facility, I mean, I don't see these things being there, but we obviously will work with them as we move forward on that. Yes?
How will this work with, will the Y have the available land to do the sports that they currently do, which are in some ways in competition with city?
They will be moving into, I think the idea is we're looking to partner with them into soccer, into football, into the other things that they do. We're looking to do that. And that's also part of the reasons we need some more fields for different sports. Brian and I also discussed, I think they've chewed up some of the game fields significantly. And I told Brian, I said, I remember when I was in City League, we used to practice in other fields, and then we'd come to the actual game field only for game day, so that we made it continue to stand. I practiced right there. It was the Cowboy Park, Dunwoody Park, in Cordova Park. I practiced. That's where we practiced. Even my son, when he was practicing t-ball, he played there. I remember I did my t-ball where the new fire station's going on Summit Boulevard was where I practiced as a child. But we never practiced on the actual game fields. We always practiced in city parks. And made sure that we had the opportunity not to tear up those game fields except for game day. So, we're certainly trying to work with what we have and partner in with them. I don't have the exact details from Brian how he plans to work it, but I know the idea is to sort of consolidate what we're doing, allow some spread out so that the Vickery fields can become more single purpose to football and other sports that are there, baseball, and then we can have a soccer complex field and better utilize our fields.
In East Hill, I've seen a few soccer goals kind of pop up in city parks, like on the right of way almost. Is the city doing that? Is that related to this?
I don't know. I'll have to check with Brian on that. But I mean, my clear direction to him was, I would like to see us start using some of these city parks for practice. I would rather. I know he's complained about some of that it's been tough for him to maintain game fields when we have so much practice on them. I said, well, why don't we practice? I mean, when I played city football, it was called Morella Park. We always called it Pirate Park, but that's where we played. But we played other teams. We played Callaway because they practiced in Callaway Park. We played Catalona because they practiced in Catalona Park. We played Terry Wayne because they practiced in Terry Wayne Park. So I think we need to go back to that thing that we practice in the neighborhoods and the parks that we have, and then we'll come to the game facilities, and it'll allow us to have those game facilities doing well. But as we move forward, we can look how that works. But that may be a part of that going forward. If you've seen that in some of those parks in East Hill, but I would have to check with Brian to know if that was us or somebody else.
And this is kind of getting down to the weeds, but would the teams therefore be geographically neighborhood based at that point? Or?
Again, I don't know how that will end up working with the individual leagues. They'll have to figure that out how they do that. But I mean, the idea is, they have to go somewhere. If they're all going to practice at the Victory, then they're all coming from somewhere else. So I mean, how they do it, it will work. I mean, I know it was much more neighbor league sports when I was growing up, but again, I think there's the different sports have different leagues and how they do it, and I'll let Brian work with some of that. But I don't think we have plenty of parks that are not being utilized now that could probably be utilized for practice.
Mayor.
Yes.
Last week, Councilman Wu talked about how the council executive was left out of any meetings with the administration, and that the council didn't get any background on agenda items from the mayor's office until the meeting itself. Councilman Wu talked about that process changing. Can you talk a little bit about how that's changed?
I think in the same meeting, Councilman Wu said that that in this current administration, that Mr. Crayer has been open to those meetings, and he's been invited to be a part of those meetings going forward. We've even had meetings with city council members beforehand. We are still trying to. I've not gotten as regular with council member meetings as I had hoped, as we're moving along on several items. But as we move forward, trying to figure out the schedule, a lot of that will determine Rick on figuring out when the council figures out what they're going to do for their schedules. So I think as we move forward, as we've had certain items come up, whether it was the attorney, we tried to meet with as many council members with the attorney and with Susan Wolf before this meeting, so that they felt like they weren't blindsided coming in on the day of. I think Councilmember Wu was very complimentary of the current administration. It's not my goal to discuss what's going on or what happened in the past. In the future, we will be very cooperative.
What's your process? I know what Councilman Wu said, but what's the process that you're using with the council?
The council is open to staff to get as much information as they need to from staff members. They are wide open and allowed to go to staff. Don is involved in things that we are discussing and we are doing, and he is encouraged to participate with that. We are trying to set up meetings prior to big events with council members. We want to have that going forward. Our biggest challenge has been on calendaring. We don't have a city council calendar at this particular moment. So I would, that's one area that I don't think I'm as happy with. All the other areas I'm very happy with, and it will continue that way. But I don't have a calendar set up with the council members because we don't have a council calendar at this moment. But I understand totally why, and I understand President Tahar is trying to figure out that and get some support. And I think after tonight we'll know much more. Chris, did you want to say something?
Well, probably one of the bigger changes is Don attends all the department head meetings. So we had a meeting last week where we walked through the agenda as a staff and went through each item and talked about where it was in the process, were the questions about it, how we structure the sequencing of the items so that the departments are together, and if they're going to stand and brief the council on the items, how to facilitate better conversation. Encourage him to encourage the council members if they have questions about an agenda item, call the staff member responsible for that and get their questions answered, before the workshop and council meeting if they can. There's some strategy on some of them, and Don's part of that discussion that takes place.
Right.
Don, do you feel comfortable with how you've been involved and engaged?
Oh, absolutely. And I encourage the council members to go through me to get questions answered, only because then I can share that information with all the council members, so we're all working from the same knowledge base. And that's
very good. Having been on the legislative side and I've experienced that, I think that's very important that you have that out of and I think you're doing a good job with that. And we've certainly engaged and worked with Don as much as we can.
I got another question.
Okay.
We'll let somebody else go.
All right, Andrew.
No, it's good.
A year or so ago on Facebook, the official Facebook of the city, it was announced that the Pensacola Police Department was fully staffed. Here we are a year later, and we're saying that we're 30 short. You campaigned 6 months ago that the police department was short. Did we just lose 30 officers in a short period of time? What happened?
No, we campaigned on what was the truth, and I can't help understand. I'll let if the chief wants to speak to that specifically, he can. But I'll just say my understanding is we were 30 officers down. We were 15 that we've gotten back up, and we've got another class right now that when we graduate in May, we should be back up to that full kind of 152 officers. But I'll let the chief speak to that specifically.
Yeah, I mentioned it during the city council meeting. Operationally, we were 30 down. Administratively, we were fully staffed. I have one opening right now because it takes a year to get them through training, and that's why we had 30 operational. There was 30 less police officers out in the city working because they were going through training. December 31st, we graduated. It was 13 people from the field training program. They're out working now. We have the final group. There's 13 of them that should start the FTO program, field training program, here next month. A couple of them are still in the police academy. They'll graduate and they'll finish up the end of May, first part of June will be the final phase of their training. So we were 30 down operationally, but administratively we were fully staffed. It's a heavy lift to get everybody trained.
I think in the future, though, we will communicate to you based on an operational. If we can't have the person out there as an officer, even if they're slated into a school, we will communicate that, because I think that gives a very misleading of where things are. So we will be more direct with you in the future, Rick. And at this particular time, we don't have everybody we want out there, but we're getting to that point, and I fully support the police in doing that, and we've had that discussion, and we're going to keep moving forward. I've had several discussions with the chief of police and the police department the importance of getting back up to those numbers, so that we have sufficient staff to properly monitor everywhere. We cannot be in every place all the time. Tommy's people do a great job. The police do a great job, but they can't be everywhere. So part of that, but we can be better about being more visible in spots, and some of that comes with manpower, and we just need some more people to get there. But we're committed to that. We keep working toward those numbers, and we're going to get there. Yes.
On that, if you know you've got 10 retirements coming this year, are the police allowed to proactively fill seats in the academy so that the overlap gap training time doesn't exist?
Tommy's kind of shaking his head, but I'm more than happy to work with him as we go forward. I was not aware that was the case of what we were doing. We'll try to evaluate what we can do. I mean, part of it, we know we want to work with some of this cadet program that he's put in there, and we want to do that. And if we have to figure out some other things in the budget, we'll try to figure out where we're going next year in doing that. I want to make sure that we have enough people stepping up. I also want to make sure we've had discussions with the cadet program, making sure that we're finding a diversity of officer. I think that's incredibly important. And my understanding is that cadet program has offered us opportunities to get some of our minorities that are interested in there, get them in there, give them a slot, and then send them to the school, so the academy. So we will continue to keep working that forward, and I'm here to work with the police chief as much as I can, and we'll figure out a way to make that happen.
The baby tennis courts closing today for a couple of weeks for resurfacing.
Yeah.
Is that a full, rip it out, grade it, and pave it, or is that just a patch it up? What are they doing?
My understanding is it's not a full taking everything out and starting from the base up, but it is a full. They are putting a new slab on top of it. So I mean, it will be. There are a number of cracks there. There are two things. I'm a big tennis player, and I like playing at Bayview. There are kind of two home field rules. If you know about Bayview, kind of tilts downside, so you really are playing downhill and uphill sometimes at Bayview, but we probably won't be able to take that much out of that. But there's some interesting cracks that can take some interesting bounces. That's a safety issue that we're trying to fix. So and I really appreciate the last administration. I know that tennis was very important to Councilman Johnson. So he was very Larry was very tied to the tennis community and made that commitment. I'm very happy he's made that commitment. We're excited to see it happen.
At Bayview also, the perimeter's up for the community center.
Correct.
When are we going to start and when are we going to finish on construction?
I don't have that information exactly in front of me. I know that we are in that process of going forward. We even were talking with some citizens that come up about there were some areas that weren't being utilized for construction that were being blocked off. So we're constantly working on maneuvering that fence so that all the areas that you should have access to. Obviously, those that are under construction. I just don't have the dates here in front of me. I'd have to talk with Brian exactly where we are on that, and we can. Vernon, can we get everybody those dates after the meeting? Mm-hmm. So we will have those sent to you and put out on our website. Yes, Jim.
Project Titan, the Triumph Board is meeting today, and then this week City Council has a resolution on their agenda to make it support of making a qualified target industry. I guess what's the current status? Where's the city at in that? And why is this resolution just now on the City Council's agenda?
And again, I don't know the particular of the qualified industries. I'd have to find out that on from where the agenda, and I'll talk to Rebecca, and we'll find out that as well and send it to you. What I do know with this, I met with Stephen Lim, who is the American for VT. ST Engineering, which is now they're no longer going by VT, they're going by ST Engineering. They've made a little bit of a name change, but ST Air Engineering for their airplane stuff. Stephen Lim is in charge of all that in the United States. He was in town on last Wednesday. We went to lunch. We had a very good discussion about what's going on. They took me on I got to go on one of the UPS planes. They had it all in there. They had the whole thing taken apart, and they were trying to fix it up and trying to do all the structural things to the plane. It's amazing. Sometimes they were showing me things that you find cracks, can find potential issues in body, which they have to fix. And again, just the wear and tear of flying those things over time, it's amazing what happens. So, that's what they do. They make sure those planes are repaired, and they really do a good job of teaching. We talked a lot about workforce training, where they want to go as we move forward. So there were some things that were very exciting about that. Obviously, that's dependent upon us getting Project Titan. So, I think from this particular point, we are all, we're moving forward. We explained to them that we probably need some level of this last $25 million probably shared between Triumph and the state of Florida. We will be making ask on both of those things. We'll be going forward next week. I think we have Chris and I have meetings to go to Tallahassee. We'll also be meeting in Chipley with DOT. So again, we will begin this stuff moving forward. I saw Ashton this past weekend and his new appointment to the Triumph board, and he was very committed to ST, and we talked a little bit about the ST project. So, from that standpoint, I think we're going to be moving forward to try to work with both groups and finding some additional money to make this thing happen, and getting this moved forward. I don't know why the qualified target industries thing is coming up now. Obviously, I don't know if it helps us. Chris, do you know?
This is a standard process that you go through to get reimbursed from the state. It's a calculation of per job, and so the jobs that they put in place out there, they get tax credits on it. So this will be a normal process that we go through to get funding for them through the state jobs program.
I did. One of the things I do want to talk to about jobs real quick. I did talk to them. Bill Hafner, the gentleman who is running the operations there, told me that they have 131 jobs there currently. During this year, they expect to bring on an additional 169 jobs. Now, the interesting part, there was a lot made about where these jobs were coming from and who was getting these jobs. And there's no doubt that that there is some training and some things involved, some skills that you probably need to obtain. But I will say, I was most impressed to see, and they had where their jobs were per zip code. But it was interesting. They had several zip codes that we have been looking, I know at least from the county perspective, that we've been looking to get jobs in. There was only one person from 32504, which is where the airport is. So again, there was a lot of concern as to who would be getting those jobs and how they would be getting them. I saw at least some spread across other the zip codes, and they told me that they would be looking, they'd hired 131 right now, and they were looking to get 169, so they'll be at 300 at the end of the year. Right now, UPS is the only real provider they're working with, but they will be slotting in other things as they move forward. And again, they will be bringing in some bigger aircraft than expected, which they were hoping to have Hangar 2 for. So they are fully adding on additional customers and everything else, so that will be ramping up, and they are very they have a schedule by which they will make that entire 1,700 employees. They just need to have the hangars up, and that's why it's important that we get this money secured and we begin the process of moving forward with the hangars.
The Triumph Board meeting today, or on their agenda, is an update on the city.
We at this point, we're still working. I mean, that's where we are. I mean, that's why we asked for the end of March. We didn't think we would have. I mean, we worked through the holidays, but it's difficult for us to arrange meetings with people. I mean, and again, until this last week, we didn't know who was going to be where in certain offices. So we've kind of been waiting to go to Tallahassee, waiting for the new governor to take over, his new administration to be in office, and us to begin to work forward with them. Yes.
You met with the county last week, right?
Yes.
How'd that go? Was there any new stuff or movement on homeless or?
We really nailed down some things that we had been talking about before. I don't know that there was really that much new that was discussed. We did find a home for the Gulf Coast Diplomacy Council. They will be moving over here onto the third floor with the city council, and utilizing some of the space that's there in the building. We are continuing to work with them on looking at whether we become a part of the clinic out there. So we continue to do that. A good amount of time was spent on dealing with homelessness and what we were dealing with there. And I think there's sort of consensus that the city and the county were happy to start moving forward to try to find a facility that we could probably do is come as you are shelter, but then have really, it is a sort of centralized place for everyone associated with homelessness to come there, whether we're talking about on the housing side, like Waterfront Mission, Richards Memorial, other places that bring in and house homeless, so that we can work through that, or also food, and is there the ability to find places that provide food services as well as other services like mental health at Lakeview and other things that will be there, even somehow tying them into. I know the county wants to still move forward with their workforce training for dealing on construction trades, and so out there by Brownsville. So again, these are things that we will still be looking to work together. So we're committed to that end and moving forward. I think what was interesting was Commissioner May was very adamant that he did not want to do another study. He wants to start moving on something that we actually get something done. And I told him I was happy to work with him on the implementation. So I think we've sort of tasked our two administrative staffs to keep moving this thing forward to find somewhere where we can begin to find a position like that. And then lastly, they did bring up one new thing. The county did bring up the veterans coordinator they have, and they said simply there's way more demand than one person can handle. Could we do a second? And we communicated to them that if they could get with us on what that would be, we might help with a portion of a second person going forward. Obviously, We feel like we're 20% of the population. If we're 20% of the cost and working forward with that, we would be happy to evaluate and see. We want to make sure that someone is helping veterans that live in the city of Pensacola obtain their benefits. So that did come up as well, and I think that was pretty much all the things we discussed. Yes?
So on that Cummings Yard facility, do you mean like homeless organizations or organizations that help the homeless would be based there, or just
What we would hope is that they could come there, and then their more long-term solutions would come with these other things. I even met with the Sean's Outpost, Mike Kimbrell and I met and talked to him how this would work. And again, the idea, if we had a central sort of point where people could come in, they could first get engaged in some housing and then figure out long-term strategy, sort of a program that goes through. I mean, obviously, spaces and that kind of stuff, I understand, fluctuate from here to there. If there was a place where we could sort of centrally bring people in, at least begin to get their minimum standard of services taken care of, and then I think one of the last things that's in there is, I think at some point at that time, once we're providing that, it's how do we begin to address panhandling? Is even Mike was saying, he said, the panhandling is not helping them right now. Unless we have a place that kind of handles that daily services, there's a sort of a reason they're panhandling. But once we provide that, there's no real reason. The only thing that somebody would be doing to panhandle is to continue to obtain things like addictions and other things that really are unproductive to their ultimate restoration. So we're going to stay focused on that. At some point, we will be, if we can get something set aside and begin to move in a way that has those needs taken care of, then we will address panhandling. And there should be no reason. The other part that we talked about is people who want to contribute, and we certainly appreciate everyone. Like I said, I was at the gala for the Big Brothers Big Sisters. People in this community are generous. We want you to give to those organizations that are helping deal with homeless, not give to the homeless on the street or who you think is panhandling. That is doing nothing more than allowing that individual to continue to sustain on something that is really keeping them trapped in homelessness. And we would rather see you give to these places that take care of housing them, providing them treatment and everything else. And I think if we can come as your shelter and have some centralized area by which all these services could come together, and really is they've sort of said, they're very siloed, but give them a place where they can actually function together and be more coordinated in what they do for the homeless, we'll probably get more out of the current money that we're putting into the system. So I think if city, county working together with private institutions and the private sector, I think we can we're not going to solve homelessness, but we're definitely going to make impacts in poverty and homelessness, positive impacts.
Was Michael willing to work with you on panhandling ordinances if the other side of the equation is?
Yeah, I think there's if we're showing I believe good faith effort in working to find things, I think at that point there's a case of where the people who are doing that are either people who shouldn't be doing it or because they're not really homeless, which is what we've often said, is not all the panhandlers are the homeless. And the other part is simply getting people to move in the right direction. And again, giving them $1 here and $1 there is not helping them do anything more than stay addicted to the things that they're addicted to. Jeremy?
So at the education transition team meeting last week,
Yes.
Someone mentioned internet, how that was a big need for students. Not all students have internet access, and they put their Google Chromebooks that the district gives them home. Some cities have done that. Is that on the city's radar, citywide?
That's one of the reasons we're looking, and Michelle's going to look at that. I mean, obviously, we'll take a look and figure out what the cost is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the good news is wireless technology is making that cheaper all around. So, we'll evaluate. One of the things I think that was in there that was incorrectly said is we do have it at community centers. But if we're making it more broad-based across the entire community, that's really going to depend on what the cost is and how we can do that with with both private companies, private sector, and assisting and what we can do in driving down the cost on wireless. But we'll absolutely take a look at it. It's just going to be a case of what we have resources to do. Well, I thank y'all very much for being here today, and I apologize I was a few minutes late. I'll make sure I'll try to stay awake after my Monday morning press meeting. But anyways, thank you very much.